The subject of the Chosen One was a bit of a contentious one among the Jedi, especially members of the High Council. Some even doubted whether or not such a prophecy was true to begin with, but their beliefs were challenged when Qui-Gon Jinn appeared with the young Anakin Skywalker, and news of the return of the Sith. However, at some point since that day, we do know that the Jedi Council stopped believing that Anakin was the Chosen One. This shocking revelation comes from us from the Legends novel Labyrinth of Evil, a novel that takes place just weeks before the events of Revenge of the Sith. In the novel, Anakin himself points out that the Council no longer believed that he was the one destined to destroy the Sith. In today's Holocron, we're going to analyze this quote and attempt to explain why the High Council stopped believing in Anakin being the Chosen One. Greetings, and welcome back to the archives, my friends. But before the Holocron officially opens, a quick message from the Council themselves. Even the High Council would agree that now is the perfect time to gear up before the holidays. We have a massive 35% off site-wide on the Star Wars merch page and an extra 15% off with code WAVE. If you want to represent the archives and carry some Jedi or Sith-inspired gear before Christmas arrives, now is the time to place your order. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel and helping us keep the archives open, and now, let us begin. Anakin's brow beetled in anger. I never claimed to be the Chosen One. That was Qui-Gon. Even the Council doesn't believe it anymore, so why should I? Because I think that you do believe it, Obi-Wan said calmly. I think that you know in your heart that you're meant for something extraordinary. This exchange is a private moment between Obi-Wan and Anakin. At first it seems like a ludicrous statement, but when we look ahead to Revenge of the Sith, we actually see a complete loss of faith in Anakin's destiny. We find a conversation between Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Mace Windu filled with doubt. Kenobi pointedly asks, is he not the Chosen One destined to destroy the Sith? To which Windu responds with a skeptical, so the prophecy says. Yoda adds on to this by stating, a prophecy that misread could have been. For as long as we've known, the High Council believed that Anakin Skywalker was the Chosen One, which is why they kept such a close eye on him. Qui-Gon had come to them with a very convincing argument and tale regarding Anakin's origins. He was born with no father, exhibited an extraordinary connection to the Force at a very young age, and contained the highest midichlorian count not just of the era, but in Jedi galactic history. A count that exceeded even that of Grand Master Yoda. At the very same time that Qui-Gon found Anakin, they were attacked in the desert of Tatooine by an assassin who was well trained in what Qui-Gon referred to as the Jedi arts, one who wielded a red blade and was powerful in the dark side. No mere dark Jedi has ever put Qui-Gon Jinn on the ropes in a duel the way that the Zabrak did. He could be nothing else but a trained Sith warrior. The twin revelation of the Sith's return and the exceptional discovery of Anakin Skywalker was no accident. This had to have been the fulfillment of the prophecy of legend. However, back then, even the Council was dubious. Although Skywalker passed all of their tests, he was still deemed too old to be trained. What's more is that they sensed an incredible amount of fear. Not only that, but his thoughts lingered on his mother. He was too old, emotional, and he had already formed strong attachments. Now they had made an exception in such a case before with Ki-Adi-Mundi when he was brought in, and when that occurred, Yoda advocated for his joining. But one of the biggest reasons they rejected Anakin was because Yoda felt a deep foreboding in the Force, sensing his signature with a deep inherent darkness and mystery that even the Grand Master could not pierce. Right there in the Council chamber, he tried to peer into the boy's future, only to find that his sight had been obscured. The dark side clouds everything, and the dark side surrounded the future of Skywalker enough to block the gaze of Grandmaster Yoda. That alone was enough for the Council to veto Anakin being allowed, despite Qui-Gon's insistence and the evidence that he was the Chosen One. But the Council later rescinded their decision upon Master Qui-Gon's death. Anakin's training was his dying wish, and the vote to pass was unanimous except for one, Yoda. Yoda plainly told Obi-Wan that he did not agree with him taking the boy as a Padawan, but he had no choice because of the lingering effects of Qui-Gon Jinn's defiance, even in death. As Anakin grew, his talent for the Force was apparent and clear. He excelled at all of his studies and surpassed every single one of his peers. This perpetuated the Council's belief that he could indeed be the Chosen One of prophecy. However, they kept that information under wraps. A lesser-known fact in the lore is only the Jedi of high rank in the Order were ever allowed to know that Skywalker was being considered the fulfiller of an ancient prophecy. The rest of the Jedi thought that he was normal. Well, as normal as someone as powerful as Anakin Skywalker can be. But why would the Council do this? Well, they were concerned that if word got out, this would create jealousy among the other Jedi Knights, and they did not want it to appear as though Anakin was getting special treatment by his teachers. The idea behind keeping this rumor quiet was to ensure that the Jedi remained united in the Force rather than divided over a prophecy. But what we believe changed, and what began to sway their opinion on Anakin actually being the Chosen One, was Anakin's attitude towards them. Skywalker embraced a rebellious persona and did what he could to stand out from the rest of the Jedi. Despite the Council's many attempts at keeping jealousy at a minimum, Anakin's fellow initiates resented him for how quickly he was progressing, and as a result, they ostracized him. However, Anakin saw this jealousy for what it was, which only fed his ego. Growing arrogant over his abilities, Anakin started to believe that he was stronger than all of the Jedi on the Council. Anakin became so insolent and prideful, he questioned masters for their decisions and outright sometimes disobeyed orders. Anakin was not good at traditional meditation, and he didn't care for the deeper mysteries of the Force. Anakin's heart was where adventure was, and he was keen with his lightsaber. His desire was for open space, the thrill of starship fights, and open lightsaber combat. This was not the Chosen One that the Council expected from the prophecy. They had anticipated that he would be the ultimate Jedi, the one who kept all the rules and performed the Jedi way on a level beyond even all of them, even beyond Yoda. They thought that the Chosen One would show exceptional wisdom and insight, thirst for knowledge, and become a beacon of light and a seeker of great knowledge. The Council perhaps expected someone like Master Yoda, but to an even greater degree. But what they got was a petulant boy with anger and attachments. All signs pointed to Anakin. Everything surrounding him screamed that he was the Chosen One. But because he didn't fit the pharisaical mold of what the Council expected, the Council lost faith in Anakin. Besides, it was Obi-Wan who defeated the first Sith in 1,000 years that day, not Skywalker. This isn't to say that they thought Obi-Wan was the Chosen One, but he carried the fame for many years, and it overshadowed most of Anakin's accomplishments during his time as a Padawan. By the time the Clone Wars broke out though, Anakin would finally show what he was capable of, and thanks to propaganda and the machine that Palpatine created, he became the hero with no fear. Left and right, Skywalker was winning battles, saving lives, turning around hopeless situations. Finally, his maverick attitude would pay off. Because since he didn't think like a traditional Jedi, his enemies could never predict him, and so he constantly outpaced and outmaneuvered all of them. When the Jedi way was not working, Anakin was the one that was called in to help. The Council during this time begrudgingly acknowledged his contribution, but it did little to sway their opinion on him being the Chosen One. Anakin gained a reputation for being disagreeable, so although he was respected, he was not fully ever appreciated. Soon, all talks of the Chosen One dwindled to nothingness. The Council stopped relying on the will of the Force to guide their actions, and decided to handle the Sith situation themselves. In the book Labyrinth of Evil, Anakin and Obi-Wan are kept away from Coruscant, tending to the movements of Count Dooku. Meanwhile, Windu and the Council personally see to tracking down Sidious. Anakin here is insistent that they return to Coruscant as soon as possible. However, it is revealed here that the Council does not want his help. This is one of the biggest errors in galactic history. Right at the time when they were closest to uncovering the Sith Lord is when they dismissed Anakin being the Chosen One. The Council may have been in a place of uncertainty, waiting to see what would happen, but Anakin could tell plainly that they had lost all faith in him, since the quote that started the speculation. We also see later that Mace Windu had dropped all trust in Skywalker and that Windu stopped believing that he was the Chosen One. When he was gathering the strike team in order to arrest Palpatine, he pointedly told Anakin to stay at the temple. Windu intended to end the Sith threat himself rather than allow the prophecy to carry out because he had stopped believing in it entirely, along with the rest of the Council. This is ultimately very sad because Windu is one of the individuals on the Council that pushed for the training of Skywalker after Qui-Gon's death. But there were still a few members of the Council that held faith. Obi-Wan was one of them. Whether or not Obi-Wan fully believed, though, is unclear. His trust in Anakin is shaken sometimes because of his actions, and of course, he often deferred to the wisdom of his superiors on the Council. There was a period in Obi-Wan's life that he severely doubted Qui-Gon's assumption, but in the end, Kenobi could not deny what Qui-Gon saw in Anakin, and he became Anakin's greatest advocate on the Council. It was only when Anakin fell to the dark side did Obi-Wan fully stop believing that he was not the Chosen One. As for Yoda, this is the most complex. From what we can tell both in Revenge of the Sith and in quotes from Labyrinth of Evil, Yoda was ultimately on the fence about Skywalker being the Chosen One. He didn't fully disagree that Anakin was the Chosen One, but neither was he completely on board with it either. He had a sort of, maybe he is, maybe he isn't. At the moment, he admitted that the dark side was clouding his vision, so he was not able to discern anything revealing about the truth of the prophecy. Yoda's decision, therefore, was to wait and see what would happen and the will of the Force. His fellow council members lost their faith one by one throughout the war though, but Yoda kept a very close eye on Anakin to see how the events of the Clone Wars affected him and how it unfolded. If the Force wanted Anakin to destroy the Sith, then he would, and the council could not stop it. But if he was not the chosen one, then they would take care of the Sith themselves. It was Yoda's opinion that whatever the truth was, the council had to remain diligent in tracking down Sidious and Dooku. And that is why the Masters of the High Council stopped believing that Anakin was the chosen one. This discovery definitely took us by surprise here at the archives. At first, it was hard to believe, but when you line up the facts, it begins to make more sense. It's always the smallest lines in any novel that can completely change the way we think about characters or organizations. To be completely fair to the Council, their doubts are not entirely unreasonable. From their perspective, Anakin's future was clouded, his emotions were extremely volatile, and every sign they expected from the Chosen One seemed to manifest in ways that they did not understand. They were dealing with a prophecy they barely comprehended, and a Jedi unlike any they had ever seen. So their skepticism was not born out of malice, but fear, uncertainty, and the very real possibility that they were misreading the will of the Force. But tragically, that same lack of faith became one of the forces that pushed Skywalker down his darkest path. When the people he trusted most grew distant, doubtful, and increasingly restrictive, it fed directly into his feelings of isolation and resentment. Instead of feeling chosen, he felt rejected. And in that growing void, Sidious stepped in. He offered the validation and the certainty that the Council always withheld. In the end, their loss of faith didn't just reshape the prophecy, it helped shape Anakin into the very thing that they feared the most. Thank you all so much for joining me in the archives here today. The Star Wars galaxy is filled with mysteries, lost moments, and small lines that completely reshape how we see characters. And I am endlessly grateful that you choose to explore them here with me. Your support, your curiosity, and your passion are the reason that these holocrons always stay open. It truly means more than I can ever say. And before we close this entry, just a quick reminder from the Sith side of the temple. If you want to pick up some Sith swag or Jedi gear before the holidays, the sale is still live 35% off site-wide, plus an extra 15% off with code WAVE. Thank you again for watching, supporting the channel, and for keeping the archives alive. May the Force be with you always.